Greetings and good Tuesday, April 19th, 2022, third decade of the 21st century. A lot of different topics being talked about today. Elon Musk buying Twitter. I find that fascinating because, in his own words, if I understood it correctly, I'm not saying I am, but he would like to see more free speech versus restricting people. Like, certain people are allowed as long as Twitter agrees with them. But if Twitter individually doesn't agree with them, certain people are booted. I digress. So I try to make every video as a bit of a standalone video. So I started this channel, among many, many reasons, was my lack of trust in the media and how I believe the media, because they're privately owned due to the First Amendment, and if they have their own personal socio-political ideology and belief system or opinion, then they're also free and clear to report stories that support their socio-political agenda, and they're also able to cherry pick and frame narratives. So they can cherry pick facts and they can frame narratives to ultimately support their own conclusion about socio-political topics. In which case, if that makes me more of a conservative, then so be it. I'm not a card-carrying conservative because whenever they start mixing in the religious aspect, that's where they lose me. I'm not a Democrat on principle alone. I could probably be considered a classical liberal, but when classical liberals get involved in the Democratic Party, that's when they lose me because I just don't like the Democratic Party on principle alone, legacy and whatnot. And then, of course, I also reached the conclusion that, maybe we don't have to pick sides. Maybe the media should not be responsible for telling us how to think or what to believe in. Maybe we can do it for ourselves. I've heard many, many people say it used to be back in the day, the news was just the news and you had to form your own opinion. Well, now much of it lately is political commentary or it's op-ed commentary. So, I try to bring up certain topics, simulate conversations, see if we can bridge the gap, get people involved, and only recently has it worked. Whether it's because of the title or not, I had no intent to deceive anybody. My channel's picked up a little bit of popularity, and I've been getting some responses. Truth be told, I've been absent for a little while because of two things. First and foremost, an utter lack of privacy. It may sound strange and it may sound weird, but without having a separate, private, unadulterated space where I can go and create content or do whatever I got to do and not interfere with the daily operations of the house, I'm dangerously close to that. I'm dangerously close to having renovated a space in the house where I can not only have my own cosplay shop, but a shop in general, but also a studio where I'm not going to interfere with the house and nobody can interfere with me and I can make my own content, so on and so forth, regardless. Why do I say that? Last week, the family was on spring break. Not me, but the wife and kids were. Secondly, because not only did I have a lack of privacy and whatnot, secondly, I made a video, I quoted an example, the example was triggering, and it just sort of spiraled from there. And there's been, I don't want to call it fallout, but I don't know of a better word. And I have failed in numerous attempts to make any kind of follow-up video. I've either been too emotional and I'm either spiraling or I'm as far from center and far from neutral as possible. And I just couldn't do it. And I realized I had posted one last video, and before I posted a video on a Firefly reboot or responding to the Firefly reboot, which was responding to somebody else, and then before I made a video on Smallville, which was my attempt to kind of just talk about something else in general, I had put out a following up on comment style video where I was responding to one person talking about Joss Whedon, and then I put my own stuff out there. And the reason I'm rambling about this is because Stace, I totally forgot Stace got involved and left a comment. And Stace, I deeply apologize because your comment sort of got drowned out kind of like my whole thing. You know, you're missing the point. The point's over here. What are you doing over here? Well, yeah, the same thing happened to me. I got hung up on the whole stuff going on with my example, Sheila making her own channel, which is fine. Please, Sheila, don't overthink it, don't overreact, don't read into it. Just part of the reason I also want to have a Zoom with Miss Sheila is I've had a tremendous problem responding to her channel because she's got 4 videos, boom, 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 boom. They're all relatively different yet linked together, almost like a series, which is kind of cool. But she says a lot of different things. And basically what it amounts to is I don't want to turn this into she makes a video, I respond. She responds, I respond. And it's like this antagonistic, biting, confrontational. No, I'd much rather just Zoom with her and be like, okay, well, here's what I got out of it. Here's what I got out of it. Here's what I was thinking. Here's what I was feeling. And just have a more honest, open exchange with her. Hopefully that all makes sense if her and I can actually get around to Zooming again and we can address her videos and so on and so forth. And then, address the overall issue. But Stace, you left a comment and I need to get to it. So, Stace, thankful for new content, not because we tend to be on different paths of life. I completely agree with being able to watch certain celebrities and not have to agree with them on socio-political levels. I love Bruce Willis movies, and I believe I would have different ideology with him varying due to different backgrounds, etc. I am sorrowful that there won't be any more movies that he will be able to act in. I'm thankful for the movies that we can still watch over and over, even Hudson Hawk. Yeah, I kind of liked Hudson Hawk. While Ron Perlman is a fine actor as well, there are things that he has done in his personal life that I have disagreed with, but I cannot judge or fault him. Yeah, Stace, I've wrestled with this one because, depending on the severity of the situation and depending on what's going on, Ron Perlman has made some pretty inflammatory comments about stuff. Pedro Pascal's made some pretty inflammatory comments with the whole Gina Carano thing that I completely and utterly just disagreed with. But I love The Mandalorian, and I love the Book of Boba Fett, and I think he does a fantastic job as Din Djarin. But maybe on a personal level, he's just not somebody I would agree with. So I'm trying to make that separation where, I like the characters he does, but maybe I just don't like him. I apologize that I'm only writing to comment rather than converse. I'm extremely introverted, and considering that I'm having a hard time with depression at the moment, I'm not much of a delight to talk with anyways. It is never my intent to finger wag or force emotions and platforms on anyone. The only reason why I had mentioned the law in Texas was to educate. Stace, again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not overly familiar with the law. My limited understanding is when it comes to the whole Florida thing is there was maybe certain school districts or maybe even certain teachers that were attempting to push the boundaries with some extremely hyper-sexualized content because in their mind that was the right thing to do or that was correct or that was appropriate. So in the public school atmosphere, to the best of my knowledge, Ron DeSantis was trying to get involved and be like, hey, look, in the public school atmosphere, there's got to be a fine line between what we should be teaching all children, and then if you want special content, well, then you can seek that out privately. I've seen some of the examples. Granted, they could be cherry-picked, but they were very explicit. So in that circumstance, I'm with him. Again, since things have become a bit more modernized and it's more and more okay to have 2 moms, 2 dads, etc. Because personally, I don't really care. You do you. You love a man, you love a woman, whatever. Are you productive members of society? Are you good, decent people? Can you do your job? Whatever. Are you good at what your chosen profession? Can you at least teach a child right from wrong? You know, even if you are man and man, woman and woman, can you at least accept biology that woman and woman can't get pregnant just like man and man can't get pregnant? And I don't, if any of what I said is controversial to you, just know that I don't mean it to be. It's just, I just think we take things way too far, and it's like, why? Why are we going that far to begin with? Um, yeah, as far as the law in Texas go, I'm not overly familiar. I do feel in the majority of circumstances, Texas is one of those states I would probably get along with the exception of maybe Austin. From what I understand, Austin and possibly Dallas Fort Worth is like the California of Texas. You may prefer them, uh, but there are certain things I think that are taken to extreme, and some people are like, oh yeah, that's fine and normal, and to me it's extreme. And conversely, I may hold certain views or certain opinions that you might find extreme. Um, I have had to limit the news feed that comes on my phone because of getting overwhelmed. I attempt to be somewhat empathetic even when it comes to things that I don't understand. It's the whole attempting to walk in someone else's shoes. There are certain platforms I cannot sway away from also because the train of thoughts I get. I overthink things or at least overanalyze things. While I would like to have updates on the war or other harsh things, my mental health cannot currently handle the overwhelming media. You know, and we might be looking at this from different points of view, Stace, but when I've had to limit and or restrict, you know, news. Basically, if I get involved with the news, it's the Weather Channel because you can't really politicize the weather. There are some that will try. You know, there are some that will, you know, try to politicize, you know, global warming, etc. But under normal circumstances, reading the Doppler radar, reading weather reports, you can't really politicize that. Otherwise, the solution is the problem is the solution. The First Amendment is supposed to protect freedom of speech as well as freedom of the press, which means the press has to be privately funded, privately owned. Because it's privately funded and privately owned, it releases them from the grip of governmental control, government oversight, government reach, and propaganda. However, if the individual entities that own media outlets have their own socio-political beliefs, they are also free and clear to pursue their own socio-political agendas. And for those reasons, I can't tune in because it's like, you know, it's either all hyper conservative or it's all hyper liberal, and I just can't. You know, it's when I go to the gym, I actually have to watch YouTube videos, like music videos on YouTube, because if I was just listening to music, I would look up at the TVs and it would be it's news with, you know, closed captioning. So now not only am I listening to music, but I'm watching the video so that I'm not looking up at the TV, so that I'm not getting riled up. And that I just don't trust the media to begin with. You know, it's like I said, it used to be you'd turn into the news to learn facts and you'd make your own opinions. Unfortunately, media has always been manipulated. Back in the days of contract films, the studios set up actors under contract to portray dating couples in order to help sell more tickets for certain movies. It also feels like the manipulated media of today's times twists into minds that are already fragile. Stace, you might have to correct me on this one, but are you suggesting that if I'm an actor and there's another actress, that the studio sets us up like a couple so that we're also a believable couple off stage? If that's what you're suggesting, I apologize if I'm not quite grasping what you're saying, but yeah, I think the bottom line is the lack of trust in the media. I hope that no matter party lines, one issue that can remain neutral is the need to normalize mental health treatment. I'm thankful that you have this platform to open up conversations regardless of it crossing party lines. When I have the strength, I turn to writing fiction and find ways to politically support my platforms there. I apologize if I caused any trouble, as it was not my intent. I cannot bring forth my sarcasm in written word. I would like to, but at least I can use this to communicate without crawling up in a shell and hiding. I do not come to your vlogs to troll. Stace, I apologize if I give you that impression. I think the difficulty I was having recently was between you or Sheila, there would be these extremely long responses, and I've learned that if I can keep my videos to right at around 20 minutes, I seem to hold a better audience than if I go beyond the 20-minute mark, at least until I can reach the brand recognition of like a Michael Rosenbaum or a Joe Rogan. So the problem with that is when you and Miss Sheila write these long and lengthy comments, I normally like to read them out loud and then respond. But if I did that, I would probably go in excess of an hour. However, if that's what you and Sheila would prefer, and anybody else for that matter, if anybody else would prefer that I read the comments out loud and respond like I'm doing right now, then I'll just continue to do that. Otherwise, I don't really remember. I'll be completely honest, and I apologize for how this may sound. I feel as though I got more of a finger wagging from Sheila than maybe I did you, which is why maybe Sheila and I have had a little bit more dialogue, and why I've also maybe had a bit more difficulty responding, because while I'm trying to open up the platform for more conversation, we can disagree and we can have differences in opinions. I think what I'm trying desperately to avoid is harsh rhetoric, harsh accusations, and harsh language. Like, well, I disagree with your disposition. I don't find it tenable, or I disagree with your outlook on that. I'm trying to reach that level of civility. And I think what I was feeling in the tone was, whether you or her or both, was, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's what was intended, but that was the impression I was getting. Yeah, I will admit I'm also enjoying the lack of negative stigmatism around mental health, but I think everything comes and goes in waves. Like right now, it's cool and okay to talk about mental health, but then maybe like another decade from now, it'd be like taboo and whatnot. I see a therapist, specifically I started to see a therapist to curb my compulsion of making sarcastic remarks or comments that may be socio-politically sensitive. Now that I'm a civilian, I don't have any rank to hide behind. To say it in the most simple terms, where now as a civilian, I'm equally open to criticism. So all it takes is one person in my class to be overly offended, hypersensitive, whatever the case may be. The funniest thing is, when I've had complaints, I think I've had complaints twice in the 5 years I've been doing my job. Both times I had complaints had absolutely nothing to do with socio-political content. It literally had everything to do with the information. People just didn't like the information. They didn't like the response. So maybe that's just my personality. So the therapy's paying off, but whatever. I enjoy having conversations with those I may not agree with. While I love having a tribe of women that I agree with on most things, an echo chamber, I do not have that with my family. The difference between the conversations on this vlog as compared with conversations with my family members is that there is no name calling here on either your end or mine. And that was your comments. Let me go ahead and minimize this. So I can't really rely heavily on my upbringing or anything like that. I listened to Sheila's videos, and I think her last video, if it wasn't video 4, then maybe it was video 3 or a combination of both, where she opens up about her family and how her family kind of forged who she is. I can't really say the same, and I apologize if this goes beyond the 20-minute mark. It just is what it is. I was pretty much raised low income. My mom, I think when I was much, much younger, was a waitress before she got into transportation, and she did everything from rates to dispatch to secretarial work. So if it involved the shipping of cargo once it came off of a boat or made it to a distribution center, I think my mom did it for numerous companies for the better part of, say, 20 plus years. Now, my stepdad, who was born basically a Russian Orthodox Jew but didn't really go to synagogue, I believe he worked primarily in warehousing, so the offloading and reloading of trucks, maybe. And then my uncle was a driver. His wife, I can't remember if Robin still does anything. My grandmother also worked in transportation, so for the majority of my life, my family worked in transportation. Um, I would say they indulged in what you might call casual ethnocentrism. I'm not trying to sound fancy or anything, but I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so my family worked in Chicago or outside of Chicago, where at the time growing up, we still had large populations of Polish people, German people, Italian people, Irish people. We had Mexican neighborhoods, we had black neighborhoods. So we still had a lot of that. So you would find, conversations like, oh yeah, you got to go through the frickin' Polak neighborhood or the frickin' Mexican neighborhood, blah blah blah. And so I would often hear conversations about some of the negative attributes of these ethnically centric neighborhoods that you would find in your major metropolitan areas like a city like Chicago. But I was never taught any hardcore bigotry. I was never raised to be a bigot of any kind. I didn't grow up thinking anybody was superior or inferior. If anything else, I grew up in low-income apartment complexes where the one thing we had in common was a lack of funding. We all had the same Italian disease, Mafunzalo. So that's also one of the biggest reasons why I joined the military. Was the military was a great way for me to find the funding to pay for my college. I just ended up doing it for 20 years because once I got in the military and I got away from Chicago and I got exposed to more things and I found a greater sense of independence in the military, I just found that I enjoyed it. Ironically enough, my first real taste of racism was when my mom and my stepdad bought a house right outside of Chicago, and it was an FHA funded house, and I experienced basically racism towards white people, either brown on white or black on white. And it was something I'd never experienced before because, like I said, in the low income apartments, everybody was equally worthless. Well, now that people had houses, I don't know what happened, but moving into a house, I found that there were people that were very proud to be black and didn't like others. I found that people were very proud to be brown and didn't like others. More importantly, I think what happened was I was dealing with people that were established. They were born and raised in the house. They were born and raised on a street or in a neighborhood, and they didn't take kindly to strangers. Whether racism was a default mechanism or not, I don't know. And then, of course, I was more greatly exposed to it in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, when you have people from all over the place, you have different socioeconomic situations, you have different backgrounds. I met people who just hated other people, period. But what I find funny is in today's society, it's always this male, Caucasian, heterosexual male evil. And it's like, that's a hell of a fucking banner for me to have to, fall under. That's a hell of a title that I have to bear. Because I'm a heterosexual and because I'm a male and I'm Caucasian, I'm all of a sudden this massive source of evil against people who consider themselves marginalized. And I was like, why don't I get judged for all the things that I've done, good, bad, or indifferent? Why do I have to inherit the sins of somebody else? But that's been my experience, and that's where that and so many other things that I've been through in my life, they forge who I am. In my short foray, into the civilian world, right out of the military, I lost my child, and then shortly, not even a month after I lost my child, I'm facing allegations of misconduct by 3 women who happen to be black women, and they're accusing me of misconduct. 2 out of the 3 were dismissed immediately, but the one that wasn't dismissed was sexual harassment. A young black lesbian accused me of being sexually harassing in nature because she told me she was gay, and I told her I didn't care. She looked at me, she asked me more, and I told her, I was like, look, you're required to show up on time. Your uniform has to be clean, neat, and in appearance. Your hair needs to be groomed a certain way. You yourself, need to be, these are the things that you need to do. And I always kept a copy of the employee handbook on me. And I pulled the employee handbook. I was like, this is what's required of you. It doesn't say anything about your sexual preference. So why would I care if you're gay or straight? I need you to do the job. Well, she had done some other things. I handled it off books because that was my purview. So she had decided to strike first, and she decided to get two of her friends to complain against me. Unfortunately, she chose sexual harassment, and that was one of those get-out-of-jail-free tickets where you can't dispute it, you can't fight it, but ultimately I was found guilty. And I think I've talked about that at least more than once. That could have very easily been a source of potential racism for me, or potential sexual discrimination. But again, I just chose to judge those individuals as who they are. Did they use skin color to their advantage? Maybe. Did they pick on me because I was white? Maybe. Did they pick on me because I was in the military and they were taking advantage of certain stereotypes that are common with the military in a not so military friendly area? Possibly. Again, I still judge them. So, I think we're forged by a lot of our different experiences, and I'll be honest, I can't really rely on my family for too much. I wish I could tell you where I get a lot of my, sources for inspiration and sources of experience from, but I know my uncle was a good source for certain things. My grandmother was a good source for certain things. My cousins were a great source for certain things. My great-grandparents were a good source for certain things. Sometimes those sources of inspiration were for what not to do. But, I know you have your differences with your family. For me, I joined the military and I got away from everything. I put it in the rear view. Maybe that's not necessarily your thing, and I'm sorry as hell you're dealing with it, in which case I will try to keep this channel going. If it does nothing, then provide you with an escape. I just need you to keep getting involved with your comments. And shame on me for not responding to your written comment. I read it like 2 weeks ago. I just don't have much of an excuse. I should have responded to it earlier, so that's my fault. So Stace, that one was for you, and anybody else who watched for that matter. Let me know what you all think. Whether there was anything in there you want to comment on. And Miss Sheila, hopefully we'll get together Thursday on Zoom so we can have more of a back and forth versus I make a video, then you make a video, then I make a video, and then you make a video. I don't really think that's productive. I think maybe it's better if we just zoom it out. Yeah. All right. Y'all are awesome.